G'day there, you're watching the Aussie BIM Guru, and today we're just going to do a demonstration in Dynamo in order to show how to rename files in bulk using Dynamo scripting. So we're going to get a list of files in a Windows Explorer environment and find and replace substrings in their names to get new file names as a result. So we're going to be using this version of Dynamo today for anyone that wants to follow along at home. And we're going to be using one custom node from the Orchid package. So for Dynamo 2x, which is the file rename node, which is the pivotal node to actually enable all of this. So I guess you're already probably wondering, Dynamo, obviously it's not just for Revit now because we're renaming Windows files. So there's a whole bunch of nodes in Dynamo, some of which you can see here, that are commonly used to handle files. It's not the most practical application for Dynamo, it's a more left field thinking way of using it, but I find I use it quite regularly when I'm working with files outside of Revit. So without further ado, let's actually go and make the script. So you'll notice here we've got a few nodes, just for demonstration's sake, that enable us to establish file and directory paths. And they work sort of like what you'd expect. Once you go browse, it tells you to navigate to a location. So it also has the option from there to turn that file path into a file in Dynamo, which is how most of these nodes will need to read those files or directories. You can then get names of files from paths with extensions or without extensions, and also the name of directories from file paths as well. And you can also process extensions of files quite a lot as well. So you can get the extension as a string. You can check if it even has an extension, because some files don't. And you can also check, you can also change path extensions, which is really helpful for processing image files between different types, for example. Because sometimes you can literally rename an extension in order to just create a new file type. So we're going to be starting with a few nodes here. So we're going to be starting with the file system get directory contents node. And the way that this will work is we'll need to go to directory first. So what I've done here is just hooked up a directory node to a location in my folders, and I've got a bunch of PDFs that I want to rename using this script. So we can't just go like this. We actually need to do a directory from path in order to turn that into a directory in Dynamo. So we'll feed in our path and then feed in our directory. What we have here is what's called a search string. So this can sort of filter out files already. Say you only want to deal with files that contain a certain substring that you want to replace to another string, which is literally the point of this script. So what we'll do is we'll create two string fields. One is what we're looking for, and one is what we're replacing it with. So we're going to say we're looking for, let's say we're looking for AR for architecture, and we want to make that structure instead for ST. So we'll look for capital AR and replace it with capital ST. And the way the search string works is you can either search for all files, because by default it's just a wildcard, or you can filter for particular parts of names. So what we're going to do is just make a little code block, and we're just going to do a formula and say asterisk plus x, which is our variable, plus another asterisk. And what that will do is build a string, if we run this, that is AR with wildcards either side. And that will filter out the files that don't meet those criteria, just to limit the number of files that we have to deal with, because we don't really want to rename files to their same name, only the ones that need to change. From there, we can also choose whether we include subdirectories as well, which is actually really powerful, because you can actually not only look inside the root folder, but you can also look inside subfolders as well. By default, we'll just say false, but if I just run that straight away, you'll see that our output is those 5 files that meet that criteria, because they contain AR. Notice that it ignored the Dynamo scripts because they don't meet the criteria. If we expand this to a subfolder level, you can see it's going to go one level deeper, and it's going to go into subfolders as well. In this case, I've just created a backup folder just in case the script doesn't work and we need to reinstate the original files. Okay, so we're just going to move this further down, because really we want to search for this and replace this. So now we want to actually replace portions of our file name to set the new one. So our method is going to be string replace, the standard node, and our destination is the rename node. So we're going to need the directories of all those files. So in order to do that, we just go file directory, and I think we just have to get the directory name of a file path. There you go. So we'll take that file name, and if we run that, you'll see that we'll get a list of all those directories respectively, without the file name itself. So we're going to feed that in. We'll just freeze this node down until we actually use it. For extension, it doesn't really matter if you keep the extension in the file name as you go. So typically I'll just say extension is nil, because it does require a extension. In this case, we'll just say it should expect nothing after the file name, because we're going to keep the extensions in the file name so that we can work with multiple types of files at the same time. Our source name is relatively straightforward. So we're going to get our file name from our file path. So if I run that, you'll see we'll get our file names with their extension. And that's obviously our source name. And our target name is basically going to be based on a string replace. So we're going to go string, we're going to search for AR and replace with ST. And we'll feed that in as our target name. So that is basically the script in a nutshell. But what we're going to do now is actually, we're just going to minimize Revit so that we can see Windows at the same time as running Dynamo, so that you can see the script in action. And then we'll quickly convert it for Dynamo Player as well. Okay, so I've got my directory here. Keep in mind that we're not working at subdirectory level at the moment, but we're going to replace AR with ST when we run the script. So if I run that, just cross-check that everything's hooked up, so we need to unfreeze. So now if I go back and I run this script, and there you go, you can see it's replaced all those instances of that text with the name we want to replace it with. And let's get this script ready for Dynamo Player as well. So we'll go is input, and we'll say that these two are inputs as well. And that should pretty much be it. I have noticed sometimes that the rename node will give a few nulls after for some reason. It seems like it looks for the file name after it renames it as well and can't find it. So typically you may get some nulls on the end of the script, but it still doesn't seem to affect the way the script ultimately works. Okay, so we've got that there. So what we'll do now is close Dynamo, and we'll just navigate to Dynamo Player. And we'll just navigate to our Dynamo script, because we should be able to run this out of the Dynamo Player environment now, which is a lot faster. When it's ready, sometimes Dynamo Player can take a little bit to boot up. Okay, there we go, and we'll just navigate to our folder. Okay, so it's called Demo, so we'll just go to the inputs on Dynamo Player. And we could have also made the include subdirectories an input as well, but we didn't. So that's probably another one that I'd recommend making an input on this script. There we go. So we can see that now we can search for our files. So we can browse to the location, and we can say what we want to replace. So let's say now we want to replace ST with ME for mechanical play. And there you go. You can see it's done it. It will report errors back, but it's not an issue. We can also replace brackets as well, so we can replace that with, let's say, a curly bracket for our revision. And you can see that now we've got curly brackets there. And likewise, we could also search for square brackets and replace them with non-square brackets. And you see how easy it is to rename little portions of file names. And if this works in subdirectories, you can do this for many, many files at the same time. So quite an efficient script, and good to be aware that Dynamo is capable of doing this. There's a lot of ways you can expand this script to be more useful as well. So you can rename files based on Excel lists with before and after. So you could have a whole list, a column with your original names and a column with your names after if you don't have a find and replace function that works. I use this quite a lot when we receive files from consultants, for example, and we need to make them into a standard name that Revit will path to. You can also use it to capitalize names of files as well quite easily by using string upper to replace all the characters in the name of the string to capital letters. And you can also change the format of files as well. So for example, turning a JPEG extension into a PNG extension for a whole bunch of image files, which is quite a common thing that I do as well. So I've built little scripts for all of these examples. But that's all for the script. It's a really simple one, quite a short one as well, but hopefully it sort of expands how you use Dynamo and might make you think of other things you can use it for that are a bit more left field from just working in Revit itself. If you have any comments or feedback, feel free to leave down below, and any questions about what I've went through, I'm always happy to answer and help. Hopefully, if you're not already following, subscribing, feel free to. I upload videos every few days and plan to keep doing so for a while. But hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Take care. Bye.